Hello and welcome to the Vino Karma Show. My name is Amanda Layden and I am your hostess. So today, as always, we have somebody incredible we're going to be speaking to who is creating amazing change in the world and also has something fantastic that she herself has created, which we're going to talk about. So I would love to introduce all of you to Treasure Hutchinson. Treasure joined Human Resource Business Partners in 2007 as a junior associate. It's here, there, at Human Resource Business Partners that she found her passion and mission to help others by assisting professionals to find the best positions for them, as well as assisting clients to find their best candidates. She now serves as the Vice President, Executive Recruiter for the organization. She is also a trainer, an author, a speaker, and a coach, and we are going to talk about her book today as well. But I would love to welcome you to the Vino Karma Show, Treasure. It is so great to see you.
Thank you.
I know we're going to have such a rich conversation today because you have so many facets to your work and your life that are really incredible and also important, I think, for this audience to hear. There's some things, I think, particularly as women, that we can resonate with and learn from you with your book, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But first of all, can you just share with folks who may not know who you are, how HR Business Partners got started and where you started your journey in the drinks business?
Okay, so I was not a recruiter in the beginning. I was working in corporate America. I worked in convenience retail. I worked for organizations like Circle K and BP, and I was the regional manager for both those companies. And then unfortunately, I got laid off, and I went to my father and said, "Hey, can I borrow a little bit of money because I'm getting divorced?" And he said, "No, you're not going to borrow any money, but you can come work with me." And I was like, okay, because he had started a new organization, which is the organization that I work with now. And he had worked for Constellation for about 25 years, or Seagram for 25 years. And then they got bought out by Constellation. He worked for them. And then he went to go work for Diageo, and then they got bought out, and then he worked for Franciscan, and then he said, "I can do this on my own. I'm going to start my own business." And that's what he did. And so I joined the business because I needed some money for a divorce attorney. And I started as a junior associate, and I thought I'd just work for him for about a year. And then about 10 years ago, he came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to be a partner?" And I said, "Absolutely." And we've been partners ever since. And so when he retires, I'll become the CEO of the organization. But it's just a blessing to be able to do what I do because you help people and you help people find jobs. And I always call ourselves eHarmony for jobs.
I love that. I mean, that's a great way to think about it, right? Because it's so important, well, not only in your personal relationships, if you have a spouse or a partner, but also in your jobs to understand, like, how do I get matched to the culture I want to be a part of? How do I get matched to the products I want to sell? How do I get matched to the leaders that I want to emulate? So is there anything in what HR Business Partners does that sets you apart, say, from other recruiters in this space?
I think what sets us apart is that we have passion. And because my father's worked in the industry my entire life, I think we just the passion. I feel like this is my purpose. And I feel like this is our purpose, is to help people. And when you find the purpose in which God wants you to do, you understand that this is what you're supposed to do. And I think that's what sets us apart, because once you work with us, you become family. You become Hutchinson. You're no longer over there. You're now with us. And so to be doing it for so long, I feel like I found my way and I found my groove and I found my niche. And we do such a great job because that's our purpose. That's what we're supposed to do, is to help people.
Yeah. I love that you pointed that out, because what that truly says is how much you care, and you care about your clients. You care about the candidates that are coming through. You get to know them. You get to learn their stories. You get to understand what's important to them and help them find their place as well. So I love that. I love that about your work.
It's absolutely rewarding.
Oh, yeah, I bet. So what's it like? What's the dynamic like to work with your father?
Well, funny. My mom is a therapist, and the first thing that she told me when I started working for him is that from 8 to 5, you don't think of him as dad. You think of him as Chet. And so she said, don't call him dad, call him Chet during the workday. And then after 5, he's dad. And that was the best advice she could have given me, because in the beginning, I'm trying to be daddy's little girl, and it doesn't work that way because he's not my father from 8 to 5. He's not, oh, honey, it's okay. No, he's like, treasure, this is what needs to be done. Well, how did you write this? I need you to write this. I need you to do it this way. And I'm like, whoa, are you doing a performance evaluation on me? But once I learned how to separate it, we're like the best partners. We're partners in crime, like I said, I always tell them, I'm your work wife. So it's just a blessing, but you have to separate the two. And once you can separate that, it makes it a lot easier.
That's really interesting. And I think that's so good, because then you're able to really compartmentalize, like, we're not upset with one another, or we're not having this conversation because we're related. We're having it because this is a business conversation. So exactly. I love that you pointed that out. Part of what you do as well is really help create some diversity in the beverage or in the wine space. Can you talk a little bit more about how you respond when leaders of organizations say that there's not enough diverse talent to recruit?
I think, one of the things I would tell people is that because my father was one of the few African-American men in the wine industry growing up, there was not a lot of diversity. And so what I tell people, there is diversity in the industry, maybe not as much as we want, but there is diversity. For example, there are people like Kate Hardy. She's the CEO of the wine group, and she's, a female. You got Rodney Williams. He's an African-American male, and he's the president and CEO of Belvedere. You've got David Brown. He's the executive VP of sales for CK Mandavi, and he's African-American. You got Robin and Andrea McBride, who own McBride Collection, sister collection of family wines. You got Andrea Smallin. She's a VP of marketing and sales with Wine Direct. You got Cynthia Gomez, who's a VP of marketing for Don & Sons, and she's Hispanic. So what I tell people is that, no, we may not be exactly where we want to be, but there is diversity out there. Compared to what I saw growing up, I see there's much more diversity. So it's out there. You just have to go find it. And finding someone like ourselves who are diverse, we're an African-American company, you can go out and find the talent. It's out there. You just have to find it.
I agree. And I'm hoping as well that we do start to see more leaders of color and, people in true positions of power, or we help people that maybe work in the vineyards to then start working at the cellar door, to then maybe start working their way up through corporate in the wine trade. It would be wonderful to start to see that across the board. And I think with different generations coming up, we will start to see more of that. We're in an interesting time in America. Actually in the world. So, depending upon what state you're in right now, I'm in California. So, our governor has announced that come June 15th, our state will be entirely open, which is interesting. So we're starting to see restaurants and bars reopen and rapidly reopen. What are you seeing in the market right now in terms of recruitment of getting people back into roles in the beverage space?
I think that once the pandemic hit, a lot of companies decided to either furlough people or lay people off because they didn't have the labor budget in order to hold, their expenses. But now I think companies are starting to hire. They have to, because now, you're right, it's about to open, and it's not just on the sales side, but it's also on the corporate side. You're looking at marketing, you're looking at, brand management, you're looking at category management, you're looking at communications, public relations, all that, financial positions are coming back, so you have a lot of people. And then also people are coming back into headquarters, where people have been working remotely. So you've got a lot of that going on as well. So it's gonna be busy. And some states already open, like our states has been open for a while, and I live in Atlanta. So, it's gonna get busy, and but it's kind of exciting to see, because I think we've missed, the whole networking and going out and fellowshipping and all that. So that's also starting to come back as well. So that's going to be exciting.
Are you seeing anything different in terms of what organizations are looking for now, in terms of how they're hiring as a result of things they've learned from the pandemic? Are you seeing a shift at all?
And I think you have the Me Too movement, you got Black Lives Matter, we had the riots, we had the protests, we had the election. So you can see that people are very open to hiring different diverse people now, because now it's out there, people are now awake and now they're woke.
Some people.
True. But I think most people are more woke now than they ever have been.
I think I hope that is, we are seeing those effects positively in corporate America now, because it is important. And it is important when we look across the board when we look across brands, for example, and the consumer is not all white men. It's not. So, if leaders or organizations start to actually hire people that represent the consumer, then I think we'll start to see more of a shift. But I'm happy to hear from your end that you are hearing from organizations that they're thinking strategically about how do we actually, based on what's happened in America, especially this past year, how do we actually get the diverse talent through the door and keep them?
Exactly. Because a lot of people they're not 100% divulged to a corporation right now. They're all about their families right now. And so companies have to see that and say, okay, what can we do differently? You have to have a shift in your thinking. If you don't, you're not going to be up with the curve. And like you said earlier, the next generation is completely different than what we've had in the past. So this generation is going to change things, and you got to change with the times.
Yes. And, we know that Gen Z is the most diverse generation America has ever had. Diverse from not only race and sexual identification, but a whole host of other things. And, the intersectionality of that generation and their families is very interesting. And we can't avoid thinking about how does that affect how we operate as organizations especially, in America. Is there any advice you're giving to the leaders you work with or to organizations as they start to perhaps, map out more thoughtfully their recruiting, their diversity in their recruiting?
Just being a coach and just training and just making sure that they understand exactly, what's out there. Talking about talent, talking about, how you can diversify, and the fact that they're willing to listen, whether they do or not, they're having the conversation, which in the past they haven't had. So that right now is a huge factor in what's going on and how we coach them and train them.
And so do you find now that there's less resistance to having those conversations?
Somewhat, yes. I think that if you're an American and living in this world right now, things have changed. I don't care who you are, man, woman, Black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Life has changed. The way that we knew life last year, this time, 2020, compared to now, life has changed.
Yes.
And everyone doesn't matter about your economic, social status. It doesn't matter, man, woman, whatever have you, everything's changed. Yeah. And so people have to be awake and open to change.
Yeah. We're coming up now, based on today when we're recording, we're coming up now on a year of when George Floyd was murdered. And, of course, then people took to the streets. Do you feel any hope that things will begin to change for better for people of color in this country?
But it's already changed. George Floyd did, unfortunately, his untimely death, but it opened up the world to say, not just the US, the world to say, wow, what's going on? So his death wasn't taken in vain. because now people are like, we got to do something with the police departments. We got to do something, look at what happened at the White House on January 6th. Like, this is not okay anymore, And so I think that George Floyd opened the world's eyes to what is going on with discrimination and racism.
Mm. Well,
And, God bless his soul, but, he opened up the world.
Well, and I think, what's really interesting, or for me, part of this is, having to have your own personal reckoning. Really, I'm white. I mean, this is obvious. So, just in case anybody didn't know. And, really examining my own thoughts, my own place in the world, really thinking through, well, how do I become a better ally? How do I become more supportive for people of color in this country? How do I stand back sometimes when it's not my place? Like, these are things that I think all of us, anybody who is trying to get on the woke train, like all of us are starting to have to think about in terms of our place in how we contribute to any racism, and how we contribute to it in this country and in corporations and in our systems. It's something that, I think about a lot, and I'm sure other people are thinking about a lot too, because it just feels like, as much as the tide hopefully is turning for the better, I feel like every day I'm not doing enough. That's where we are, I think, in America. And I am hopeful. I am hopeful that other white women in particular, I say that again, white women in particular, are doing the work and are standing as allies.
Wow. That's a huge statement, but I think you're right. I think it's made everyone kind of question who they are, regardless of your skin color, because just because I'm African-American doesn't mean that, people don't see racism or don't discriminate against other people or whatever have you. So we all, I think, have opened up our eyes and said, wait, what am I doing? How am I helping the cause? Am I helping the cause? So I think you're right. I think everyone has had to evaluate their own situation.
Yeah. So although things are starting to change, and things are starting to change in the beverage space, in the wine industry as well, the industry still, to me, feels woefully behind in certain areas around representation, also around, the sexual harassment that has gone on in the industry. The past couple of weeks, the restaurant industry has been blowing up in terms of people calling chefs out for sexual harassment and misconduct, like big name chefs. People are getting dragged through the Instagram and Twitter verse and all that kind of stuff right now. And it's part of it is, that cancel culture, which I don't agree with, but the other piece of it is how, this reckoning that people are having. Anyway, that was a really long way for me to say, what other steps should the industry be taking to ensure that there is more equity and representation?
I think that it's all about who you hire and about who you bring into the organization and what type of message you're sending culturally as an organization. That's huge. I mean, that's what's important. And there are people out there who are doing the job, who said, you have to be intentional about what you're doing. And there are companies out there that are being intentional. Some companies are not, but every company is not going to be intentional in doing what they need to do. That's just reality. But I think the steps are, is the intention part.
There's just a stat that came out over the past couple of weeks, and I should have actually pulled it and been able to cite who it was. There's some research that's done that basically said, if in the beverage industry you aren't actively and intentionally creating diversity, equity, and inclusion, then your brand will be gone within the next decade.
Probably true. Absolutely. I mean, yeah. Look where we were a decade ago. Look where we are now. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely correct. Especially what's gone on in 2020 and 2021. So, so it's probably going to be, it's probably going to change faster than that, than the decade, probably in 5 years.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, just imagine what conversations we're going to be having in 5 years.
I know. Isn't that interesting? That'll be 2026.
That's also mind blowing. I want to share with people who are watching and listening to this about you personally. So you are you've written about, you are co-author of a book, there or two. There's one book where you were co-author, which is Words from a Widow: Embracing Our New Normal. And you wrote the chapter entitled Finding Treasure in the Sea of Darkness, which
Yes.
that's beautiful because I love all of that. And then you have just come out with another book, which is entitled Divorce, Death, and Dating Before the Age of 40. Look at that. So
Yay! That's
beautiful.
me.
So can you share with folks a little bit about your life story and the lessons you learned, especially those that you share in this chapter and also in your new book?
So divorce, death, and dating before the age of 40 is just that. I was divorced by the age of 31. I met my ex-husband in college, and then we dated for 9 years, and then we were married for 4, and then realized it wasn't the right move. And then I met my late fiance, and I met him in 2008, and then he passed away. We just gotten engaged, and then he passed away 2 months before we were supposed to be married. And it
Whoa.
was an accidental death. He drowned, and he was the love of my life. And you grow and you learn. And I was only 36, 37 when he passed. And so I didn't know what to do. I felt like my life was over, but I realized God had not taken me. And so I was here for a reason. And then I met my current husband. I met him in 2013, and we've been married now for 6 years, and we dated for 2. So we've been together for 8 years. And truly, he is my soulmate. And if I had not gone through what I went through, I never would have found my current husband. And what I've learned through the whole ordeal is that you go through things for a reason, and it's your testimony who would help someone else. So you don't go through things for yourself. You go through things to help someone else out. And so I am a grief counselor. I do help a lot of women who've lost their husbands because I've been through that. Because you think your life is over. It's not. My life just started. And at the age of 45, I am the happiest I've ever been because I realized God has brought me through. And you may not have a lot of people in your life to lean on. And, my parents didn't understand. I loved them to death, but they've been together for 52 years. My brother didn't understand. He's still married to his wife, and they've been together for 20 years. So I had a lot of people who didn't understand what I was going through. And the only person I had to lean on was God. And I realized, and then I went to a support group called Grief Share, and that helped me out significantly. So I tell people, when you go through tragedy, and tragedy doesn't always mean death. It could be divorce. It could be the loss of a job, loss of a home, loss of income. All of that is grief. But what you realize is that there is hope on the other side. And that's my testimony that, it will get better. You just have to have faith that it will get better. And like I said, I've been through it. Every time someone hears my story, you used to see the look on their face like, oh, and I said, guys, I'm okay. Because he was supposed to go when he was supposed to go. And he taught me what I needed to be taught. My ex-husband taught me what I needed to be taught. We're all who we are because of what we've gone through in our DNA. And I wouldn't be the woman that I am right now if I had not gone through what I went through. So I have no regrets.
That's beautiful. And I think, there's people who, like, as you rightly pointed out, that could be going through any number of things right now. The loss we've had in our country this year alone of family members, of friends, of, people in our circles because of, the pandemic, because of COVID, and just in general, the loss of connection we've had with one another. There's so many layers of grief going on. Is there something that you learned about yourself in that process that surprised you?
What I learned, I'm a twin. I have a twin brother. Yes, it just keeps coming. So, and one of the things that my therapist pointed out to me when I had lost my late fiance is she said, in 36 years, you have never been alone. because I even went to college with my brother, even though we went to different colleges. He went to Morehouse, I went to Clark Atlanta, but we came to Atlanta together from California. So for the first 18 years of my life, I had a man in my life, and that was my twin. And so she said, you've never been without a man. So for the next year, I don't want you to date. I want you to date yourself. And I was like, what? And I learned a lot about myself. I learned that I like to take walks. I love to hike. I love to exercise. My late fiance, he loved Prego. I hated Prego. So I remember the first time I went to Publix, I was like, I'm getting ragu. And it was like, and I was like, ragu, yes. And it was like, and I know they're looking at me like, ragu. And I'm like, but when you're always living for someone else, for the first time, I was living for myself. And it was the best thing ever to date myself. And that's what I learned you have to be number one. I can't be everything to everybody. God's number one. I'm number two. And then my spouse is number three. Then if you have kids, they're number four, and then everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned, is that you have to put yourself as number one. I love my husband, but he's not number one. God is. And then me. And I learned that from Michelle Obama, because she said God, then she said her, and then she said Barack, and then the kids, and then everybody else. And if you're not number one, no one else is going to be number one. You have to be.
It's, oh my gosh, that's so true. And I think even now, when we think about, again, what's going on in the country and the number of women who have left the workforce this past year, who have had to opt out for a number of reasons, either they chose to, or because now they're back taking care of the family, their children, a sick family member. And, I think probably trying to figure out how to navigate putting themselves first, or even giving themselves any type of time alone, let alone, the implications that all of that has on the workforce and how far behind women are going to be again in the workforce. But I agree with you. It's like finding it, what it reminds me of, that I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Runaway Bride, where she doesn't know what kind of eggs she likes. like how do you not know what kind of eggs you like? Even as basic as getting to know yourself. I think that's a really, really good lesson. Are there any other lessons you can share with folks from either your chapter or your book that you think people really need to know?
What I really want people to know is that there is another side, and you can get through it. And, you think about, as I walk through the shadow valley of death, in the Bible. And one of the things that God says as I walk through the valley of shadow of death, he didn't say, I'm going to lead you there. Now, you may have to sit down, you may have to lean, you may have to just stay for a second, but he'll get you through the valley of shadow of death. You just have to be patient. And so what I want people to realize is that there is another side, and there is happiness, and there is peace. But you have to, sometimes it's not your time, but your time is coming. And that's what's important, because I didn't understand what peace meant. And one day my dad says, you're going to wake up and you're going to be smiling and you're going to have joy in your life. And every morning I'd wake up going, okay, the joy is not here yet. The joy is not here yet. And one day I woke up and I had some glimmer of joy. And I realized, I can breathe and I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to start crying now. Think about it. But it's just to be at peace. And that's all we want, is joy and peace, whatever that may be.
That's beautiful. The other thing you mentioned, and I want to point out, because I think there's so many stigmas around it, is you mentioned your therapist. So, one of the things that I think people in certain communities don't seek out or don't talk about enough is mental health and their own well-being. And part of what you're talking about too is getting back to yourself and your own mental health. So is there anything you want to share in terms of, I think part of it just needs to be destigmatized, and that it's okay to go see a therapist. It's okay to go to a grief group or to seek out a grief counselor. So is there anything you can share with folks who are sitting on the fence, may have gone through whatever they've gone through this year or in past years, to encourage them to seek the help that they need?
My mother is a therapist. So let me start there that my mom has been in private practice for, I don't know, 30, 35 years. So I grew up with a therapist. So therapy in my household was normal because of who my mother was. But when my late fiance passed away, my mother was the one that said, you need to go find a group because all your friends are not going to be there. Your friends love you because he passed away Memorial Day weekend of 2011. But come August, people are going back to work. Kids are going back to school. Your friends don't have time for you. They love you, but they don't have time to sit there and mourn with you. You know, the lasagna stopped, the macaroni and cheese stopped. People stopped calling. And it was my mother who said, you need to go find a therapist and you need to go find a grief group. And I was like, I don't need any help. Yes, you do. You do. And the wonderful thing about it is that a therapist is a third party. So they don't know you from Adam. So anything that you talk about, they're listening for the first time. You know, your friends love you, but they're not educated to help you. And I think that it is a stigma, especially in the African American community, that mental health is not a problem. And one thing about a therapist, it's just nice to go talk to someone. And there are free agencies that can help you, even if you don't have the money. Churches, because they have a sliding scale. So a lot of times you pay for what you can afford. But it was the best thing for me because my family loved me. My friends loved me, but they had not been in my shoes. Yeah. And so, once I went to group counseling as well, group grief counseling, I became a counselor because I knew that I wanted to help other people. And so I thought it was just important after a year that I become a grief counselor. So, and I still do grief counseling to this day. And I do it because it helped me tremendously. And so, I tell people, go out and seek out that group, whatever that group is. They're out there. Just go on Google and find them, and I went to a Christian-based grief counseling, but I mean, there's a lot of different places that you can go to, but it's so important. And a lot of them meet at churches or, places where, they're open and honest, and it's a safe place. And it's a safe way for you to express your feelings, because a lot of people, they don't want to know what you're going through. They love you, but they don't want to know.
Well, and I think, and also they can't understand. Yes. And as human beings, we do weird things when people are going through grief. Like we haven't been taught how to respond to our family members or our friends when they are going through something like this. I was actually having a conversation with a girlfriend not too long ago who she lost her husband in the past, I want to say it's been about 18 months now. And, I was saying to her, you're the one left picking up the pieces. And as much as we love you, I'm not thinking every day to pick up the phone and call you because we've gone on with our lives. And, you're stuck in this place where you're picking up the pieces. And she's like, exactly right. And it's like, it's not that your friends and family don't love you. It's just that, we're just human beings. And so I do think what you're saying is so important for people to seek out that support. Also, do you have any advice for people, on how they should respond or what they can say to people who might be going through some type of grief like you experienced?
I would say don't say anything. I'm here. I'm here to listen because people don't know what to say. And the problem is people say the wrong things. Like I heard, well, at least he didn't leave you. What? Okay. He didn't, leave you down the aisle. I don't think that's appropriate. Or, at least he didn't kill himself. Okay. And I just think people just don't know what to say. So my biggest thing, I have a friend of mine, she lost her mother, and we always said we could write a book. My friend Cornelia, we said we can write a book about the wrong things that people say. But I would say just be there, just listen, be present. Even if you just sit there and don't say anything, don't say anything. Sometimes you just want someone to sit with you, Yeah. That's it. Don't, just be present. My best friend Tom, he was there and he just would listen. He didn't know what to say. To this day, he still doesn't know what to say. But he was just there. And I think that's what's important.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so true. I could also contribute to yours and Cornelia's book based on something I experienced about what people should not say. Yeah. that is, I mean, that is beautiful just to say I'm here, and not to have to give a solution or give a response or say something that's ridiculous. But yeah, that's beautiful. So if we go back to just like thinking about everything we've talked about the beverage industry, the wine industry, how you help people. I just want to point out too, I love your energy and the fact that you're really here. You can feel, and we're doing this on Zoom, and you can feel your joy, you can feel your passion, you can feel your compassion for other people, and just that everything you choose to do is about service to others. That's just kudos to you, because there's not a lot of human beings I feel that are like you.
But I also think that's a nod to my parents. They raised me to be of service to others, that we're not on this earth for ourselves. We're on this earth to help other people. And, my father being in HR, my mom being a therapist. I mean, I grew up with people who serve, other people. And so I would just say that it's nod to my parents, who is why I am who I am.
Wow, that's nice. That's really beautiful. So thinking about everything we've talked about, I think you've provided so much value and hope for people out there who might be going through something. And also just your view on, if we go back to where this conversation started, which is about the beverage space, your view on just simple things that organizations can do. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed that you want to share with the audience, or that I haven't asked you that I should have? Anything else you want to highlight about you, your life, the work that you do with through HR business partners or the industry? Anything else you want to share?
I just want to share that when you are interviewing for a job, the best thing you can do is be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else, because at the end of the day, they want to hire you, not who they think you are. And so I always tell people, your only competition when you're interviewing is yourself. You're not competing against anybody else. And if you don't get the job, there's probably a reason why you didn't get it. Either A, you didn't fit within the cultural organization. B, you wouldn't have gotten along with your immediate supervisor. So there's a ton of reasons why you don't get a job, but look at that as an opportunity and not, something that is negative. It can be a very positive situation. It's a learning, curve, and everybody has to learn. And so that's the one advice I can give about being a recruiter: be your authentic self.
That's great. I think authenticity is so important today, and people can see.
Yes.
I think that also just goes back to what you were personally talking about, which is know thyself, in terms of who are you and what do you enjoy, and sometimes in our business we use assessments, right? So we use personality and behavioral assessments. Understand how you operate so that you aren't put in a situation where like you said, you're not a cultural fit, or there's something that isn't right about the role. I think that's really, really great advice. Anything else you want to share with folks before I give you back time?
If you want to purchase any of my books, you can do it on Amazon.
Yes, actually, that's a great point. So we will drop the link to your books. We will put your books up here so that people can get them as well. And anywhere else, how else can people find you if they want to learn more about you or they want to work with you?
Instagram, Treasure Hutchinson. Email treasure@HR, B as in boy, P as in Peter, #1.com. Facebook, Treasure Hutchinson, or LinkedIn, Treasure Hutchinson. I am the brand.
There is a common theme. It's Treasure Hutchinson.
Treasure Hutchinson. And then our website is HR, B as in boy, P as in Peter, #1.com. And you can see me there as well.
That's great. So definitely, I think that's, especially for folks who are looking to get a new role in the industry, for organizations looking to hire diverse talent and people that fit with their culture, definitely go check Treasure out at HR Business Partners, and we will drop the link to your website here. Anything else before we sign off here today?
You know what? Like I said, just know who you are and know your purpose. And once you understand that, life is good.
Know who you are and know your purpose. I love that. Well, Treasure, we can't thank you enough for your time, your expertise, your willingness to share your story. I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people. And so thank you once again. And as we say here at Vino Karma, remember to go out there and create change one sip at a time. Cheers.